First things first, Jacob, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, great. Yeah, tired but happy. Yeah.
Good to see you again.
Yes, indeed.
What I want to start with is you said something at the, well, you won 2 Grammys in between our conversations.
Our last 2 conversations, yeah.
And there was something you said that was, there's never been a greater time to be a creative person than in 2017. How come?
Well, that's an interesting question. The internet, first of all, I think it's like a ticket to ride for many people. There are no rules on the internet, so you can do whatever you like. So I think that right now the creative power of the people is in the hands of the people. It's not in the hands of Mr. Record Executive or Mr. I'm in charge of a company. It's more about I have ideas, and with the internet I have the validation to do them. So I think that it's an age where people with small numbers of resources can make exciting things happen and do it on their own. And I think for me, that amount of the amount of autonomy you can have is extremely wonderful, in my opinion, just with regard to what you can create and what things can be done.
And then you mentioned the bedroom artist. It's kind of
right, yeah.
How you explain it. And obviously you yourself were a bedroom artist. So if we go back to that time, do you remember how your development as a musician started? Because, well, you grew up in a very musical household. There were instruments everywhere. How did it start developing to where you are now?
Yeah, interesting. So I was brought up in a family that loved music, right? So I had music everywhere in the house. I would find music in every corner, and that was really nice. I think that as I was learning to speak, I was also being played like Bach and then Stevie Wonder and Earth, Wind and Fire and Bobby McFerrin and things like this. So these kinds of people were very much part of my language. And so when I wanted to express myself as a child, I wouldn't just draw upon words. I'd also draw upon these sounds. It was like this kind of stuff, because I'd hear this as meaning something emotional, and I'd try and use it. And in my quest to try and be as emotional as I could be, I would seek to try and represent sounds that you can't just do with the voice. So sometimes you need like a piano to do that. So I'd find the piano and what's the sound? Oh, I found it. It's this sound. And if there was no piano, then I'd just sing all of the notes in the chord. But I loved the feeling that music had about. It makes you feel like you're leaning into somebody's emotional framework and dealing with them in that situation. I think is amazing. So that I guess another important thing to bring up is that I was encouraged to be inside my own imagination. That was a good thing.
Right.
If I was thinking or creating something, that was definitely a wonderful thing to be doing. And it didn't really matter what I was doing, but creation was empowered. And I was very much encouraged to believe in myself. Like I had a valid imagination, and that spending time in there was always a good thing. Yeah.
It might sound like a silly question, but have you asked your mother why she kind of imparted this into you?
Yeah, we've talked about it a lot, especially in the last couple of years, because lots of people ask me that question, how did you learn and stuff. And so, I think that my mother has always been a very intuitive person. She's not the kind of person who would sit down and just sort of try and plan how to bring up a child. It would be more that she's such a giving person, energetically giving. So I think that I was really like a sponge with her, and I used to watch her teach on the violin, because she's a violin teacher, and she in particular was just such an important person with regard to communication and sort of elegance and grace and articulation of ideas and things like that. But I don't think she really thought too much about it. I think she was just being herself.
Right.
And thus I am myself,
And well, your mother is a music teacher, so I assume kind of all that musical theory was you kind of seeped that up like a sponge?
Yeah, I internalized it a bit at a young age, yeah.
But you've also said that music for you look for the feeling first, and then what you just mentioned now, the emotions. So how do you, I don't know if that's even what you do, but balance these 2 worlds?
Yeah, it's a big challenge. I think that I only really begun to think about harmony in terms of theory much later on.
Okay.
When I was about 16 or 17 or 18, I began to understand what jazz was, and I listened to jazz, and I went to jazz college, so I learned about jazz theory and how it all fits together. But up until that point, I knew the sounds, but I didn't know what they were called. And so, instead of it being like, this is an F minor 11 chord, it would be like, oh, this is the F minor chord that makes me feel really warm or something. Right. So like, this is how I remembered the chords. And then later on, when I learned what they were called, it was like a bonus really, and it helped me to communicate with other musicians about them. But you know, my mind is very fast in that kind of mathematical way, but the only reason why it's worth learning those labels is just so you can communicate more about how to be emotional with stuff, because I only really like music for that reason. I don't. The reason I listen to music is not so I get some kind of intellectual thrill. You know, I think that as with many people, it's, you know, the reason I listen to music and also play music is because I want to express something, and when I listen, it chimes in with different things I'm feeling, and it helps me to navigate those feelings. So, you know, I get very emotional about all of the little details in chords and stuff, because that's kind of how I was brought up to feel, I guess.
And then what you mentioned earlier as well, where the emotional part is kind of how you learned to play instruments. So, were you looking for certain emotions, or were emotions kind of coming out and then looking for?
Yeah, there's a really interesting study done on language and kind of psychology in language, and the study is something like, if there's no word for an emotion, like there are certain cultures in the world where they don't have a word for this emotion. If there's no word for it, then they actually don't feel that emotion. It doesn't exist to them. Okay. And I think that's fascinating, because essentially what language does is it adds to your stock of available reality, right? And that's what art does. It adds to your stock of available reality. So in music, there are definitely things that you find that maybe you didn't know before, but it's like that is a combination of feelings that I've never had before. That's like a mixture of longing and certainty and vulnerability and inevitability, you know, and that combination of emotions in that context, like that is something that I wouldn't necessarily look for. I wouldn't say I'm going to look for that emotion. It would be something I just find it. Like, so there's a song, and there's this one moment where I get shivers down my spine. Why do I get those shivers? And if you think about it, you think, oh, it's because the harmony moves here, and it's unexpected, but this note in the chord was also in the last chord. So there's a common thread, but then there's also this defiance of expectation. So all these little thrills. For me, that's why music is so fascinating. Is because you can be so emotionally delicate with it in a way that actually you can't even be with language, because with, you know, speaking English or something, it's different.
Well, that's what I was going to say, and then not even just the creative side, but being on stage, I suppose that feeling that it gives you, it's not easily explained in
describable.
words.
Yeah, it's amazing feeling, and obviously when you do something, when you record it, you can be very controlled and things. But when you do something live, you know, I've really fallen in love with this feeling of giving the energy to the room, and so especially on the harmonizer, this amazing instrument called the harmonizer, which I built. It's like you can do harmonic things and see the reaction in the room. You can see people go, or like kind of look at each other, or just you see people's eyes light up, and just to navigate the whole room of emotions is just amazingly exciting. But it's something that you always learn more and more about, you know.